Welcome back. It has been a very, very long time, hasn't it? I'd like to be generous and call this the first episode of the second season of Lives of Adventure, but I feel like that would be overly generous. So I will just call this massive break what it is, and that was a hiatus for a little more than a year. In that intervening year, my family and I moved to Dublin, Ireland. We welcomed our third kid into the world, and then we moved back to the Italian Alps. So I'm back here in my office up in the attic, speaking to you from the mountains, and we are going to have many more episodes to come. So this is the first in a long line, hopefully that second season perhaps, of really great guests. And today's guest is a good friend of mine, Dave Flanagan. Dave happens to be my brother-in-law's brother-in-law, my brother-in-law squared, as it were. And Dave has a really interesting job. Dave writes guidebooks, and he got into writing guidebooks in a very interesting way. And it's a brilliant conversation in a lot of ways, because I feel like lots of people go through the same types of things that Dave went through in kind of a career transition. But not many people have the guts to actually turn it into a job that they love and change jobs and move into something completely different and find something that they really enjoy doing. So Dave and I talk about what his job is, which is writing guidebooks. We talk about the ups and downs of writing guidebooks and what's great and what's not so great about that. And we go into a little bit more detail about how Dave got into the outdoors and the outdoor pursuits in general. So it's a really fun episode. We kind of go all over the place and we go back and forwards and talk about a lot of different things, but I hope you'll find it very interesting. Dave is a very funny guy, so that should at least keep you entertained. And again, we'll have a bunch more episodes coming soon, so keep your ears and eyes open, and we'll talk to you again soon. But for now, I will leave it at that, and I will jump straight into it with Dave Flanagan. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you.
This is the first episode that I recorded sitting across from my interviewee, so that's a bit strange, but I'm sure we'll get used to it.
Yeah.
And I think we have some interesting stuff to talk about.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully so. So we're sitting in Dublin, where I have moved just recently, away from our lovely house in the Alps to Dublin, Ireland for about a year. And right now it's nice and sunny and cold, good winter conditions, but I have a feeling that the Irish winter is going to actually kick in force here pretty soon, and it's just going to be wet and dark and hideous for months on end. Is that probably accurate, Dave?
Yeah, well, it's kind of bluebird day today, nice bouldering weather. Maybe 10 years ago we'd be out somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Not even sticky damp, it's just dry.
Yeah, for once.
For once. So cool. I guess one of the places I wanted to start, and you can maybe fill in the blanks for me here, because we know each other quite well. You're sort of my brother-in-law's brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law squared, yeah.
Yeah, brother-in-law squared. So that's us. And, one of the things that I heard about you years and years and years ago when we first met was that you had this really good IT job. You were working for Ericsson, and you, I guess, were offered redundancy or something and took it and then just never went back to work in the classical sense.
Yeah.
So we can start there and see where that takes us.
Yeah, well, so I left college and I did computer engineering, and then I worked for 10 years as a software engineer in Ericsson. And in winter 2009, came into work one Thursday morning, and we got an email at 9:30 saying, meeting UCD in the big O'Reilly Hall in an hour.
In UCD, like the university?
We were a 10-minute walk from UCD. So we got basically this last minute, everyone to this meeting. And I knew immediately something was up. So 300 of us went into the O'Reilly Hall. Everyone was sitting around, and suddenly CEO of Ericsson walks in, and everyone was like, uh-oh. And he just stood up and said, I'm sorry, guys, all your jobs are gone. And the room was just like, it was amazing actually, because the energy was just like sucked out of the room. People were crying, and because Ericsson had a lot of people who'd been there like 20 plus years, lifers, and like couples who'd met there and all that kind of thing. And to be honest, I was like doing a little fist pump. And immediately the folks in the room just changed. Immediately all the questions were about what's the redundancy, what's the package. That's all everyone wanted to know. So that was 2009, and I was kept on for a while, and I finished on the last day of that year. And then on the 2nd of January, Hazel arrived. So my first child.
Yeah.
So I decided to take a bit of time off. You know, it was good timing, just to help Jenny out. And while, as you know yourself, you're hanging around the house, but there's only so much you can do to make yourself useful. And I had been, for the last 10 years before that, had run a website called The Short Span that was basically about bouldering in Ireland. And I was just trying to document that. And initially it was just the odd topo here and there. But I started working on a PDF, and that became bigger and bigger and bigger. And by 2009, it was like 120 pages.
I remember that.
Maybe, I don't know, 800 problems all over the country. And obviously there was no like paper guide at the time. So it kind of occurred to me that this was an opportunity to maybe do a guidebook, a print guide. And people had been saying to me for years, and I was kind of like, I don't know why I was reluctant really, but I suppose I felt it was a big job. And I also felt we were like still finding new stuff, and it wasn't the right time, you know, because you don't want
if you wrote it all down, then you'd be just like, well, now it's stuck.
Yeah, and you don't want to be like, oh yeah, you know, here's the print guide, but it's missing like the main area that someone just found. So, the timing was good in the terms of that I timed my hands, and also like the rate of new stuff had kind of that curve flattened out a bit. So I like didn't have a clue, got InDesign, just went at it, and it took a year, but I was kind of at that stage going, I don't really want to go back and be a software engineer. Like, to be honest, I can't really figure out how I swung that, you know, that I was just like I got a nice bit of redundancy. So that was a good padding. So there was no real, real urgency financially.
You weren't about to starve or anything.
Yeah. And then, so my wife Jenny's a teacher. So again, she was going back, and it was giving us, you know, we still had long holidays and stuff. But I did the book, and it was great. I really enjoyed the process, and it was very much learning as I went along. And I was asking a lot of people for advice, and they were all very good. And, you know, it made mistakes, but nothing major. And it sold. It was never going to be like a bestseller. It was always ultra niche. But I intentionally, it's funny because I felt kind of bad about it, because effectively it had been open source. Right. You know, it's just been gathering. People have been great about sending me topos and photos, and, you know, like little hand drawings in the post, you know, this kind of thing. And so I felt almost like I kind of like commercialized that then. So kind of to make myself feel a bit better, it was only €15, which is a bargain. Yeah. So that was my kind of nod towards the community, I suppose. But it sold well. And then after that, I think I was just punting around for a while. I really I suppose Jenny went back to work, and I was minding Hazel then full time. So I was a stay-at-home dad then, really. That was on my passport. That's what it would have said. And then I decided to do a Bouldering Essentials book.
Yeah, I remember that book actually.
And that took ages.
You're going to have to go through all like the full, the full library of Dave books. I can't even remember some of them. Yeah.
And that was really interesting. And again, like I like to do a book in a year. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do it any quicker, and it's like you don't want it to drag on. You just get sick of it. You know? It's like studying for an exam. You just get to a point where I just want to get this thing done. And a year gives you a cycle of the seasons, which I think is nice as well. You know, so you know you do your field work in the summer, and then you have a winter to just like knuckle down and lock yourself in a room and do your writing and your
details and all the rest of it,
all the proofing and all that kind of thing.
So let's jump backwards, because people are going to be like, how did he think that was going to be okay? Like, how, you know, and like you said, you had a bit of redundancy, you know, there was a bit of padding there. Jenny was on maternity leave. You guys weren't going to starve, but deciding, and like, yes, you ran the short span forever. So you had a lot of the material. Yeah. You were the right guy for the job at the right time. Yeah. But still, that step is kind of, okay, I'm going to write a book, and it's going to take me a year, and I've got no experience in this whatsoever, and I'm going to produce the actual guidebook for Ireland, you know, for bouldering in Ireland. Yeah.
Well, like in terms of getting away with it, I think in terms of my family, I think I kind of slow rolled it, and I slow rolled myself, and I slow rolled my wife, because like I never set out. It was never like the first book was I'll just do this, and that'll be, you know, that thing done, and that'll be a tick in the box. Right. And you know, I'd invested a lot of time in the whole bouldering thing, so it was nice to have this like a physical embodiment of that, you know. But yeah, I guess I like to kind of jump into things a bit, you know, and like printing a book is scary because, you know, it's not like a web page or something where you can just come back and tweak it. Like that moment, I distinctly remember in the kitchen of the house I lived in when the the advanced copies arrived.
Right.
Opening it up, like my heart was like in my mouth for sure. And it was a great moment. It was really good actually, just to flick through it. And the funny thing is you flick through it and once you haven't spelled your name wrong on the cover,
right,
and it looks okay, like you just put it down. You don't want to look at it again because the more you look at it, the more you'll find potentially things that,
the more typos or
tiny little things
details,
maybe, or hopefully tiny little things, but they'll annoy you. But then you put it down and like you might pick it up 6 months later to look something up or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's someone else's book. You can look at it completely objectively.
Wow.
Like I was down away with my family and someone had the Wild Atlantic Guidebook.
Right.
And I sat down and read it for half an hour. And my sister was like, are you reading your own book? And I was like, yeah, it's great. It's really good.
That's brilliant.
Like honestly, you're just like kind of self-actualized away from it. It's just like, it's gone, you know?
Yeah.
And so it is interesting. But in terms of the technical things, you just figure it out.
Right.
You know? And there's like, I'd no design background. I'd no like marketing or distribution or any of that. And that was all just figured out by asking people, climbers who worked in that trade to just point you in the right direction.
Right. And how did you know someone who knew someone in that field, or was it just, you just started asking around or looking in the back of guidebooks that you had on the shelf?
John Cofield from Vertebrae Publishing pointed me at a distributor and talked to loads of people like John Watson, a Scottish guy who produced a guide. I'm a terrible man for just firing someone randomly an email and just going, here, what's the story with this? You know,
right.
People tend to be pretty good at getting back to you, you know, and, but like, yeah, I no doubt looking back in it now, I'm sure I made loads of mistakes and I'm not big into like design, if you know what I mean?
Right.
Like I didn't spend and I wouldn't spend days agonizing over what font to use or, you know, I wanted to always the criteria was for it to look really good. And like to be like, it's a real cliche and I'm loath to say it, but I'll say it anyway. The idea was to inspire.
Now you have to say it.
Okay, so the coffee table angle is to inspire people and then it has to be like a working document. So it has to inform people. So they're my kind of two things. So like when I read a review the odd time and someone go, oh, it's kind of like a coffee table book. Like I'm like, I always like to hear that.
Yeah.
But I also want people to be able to, like, in the case of the Belgian guide, find the crag.
Right.
You know, because that was what I remember. Grimer, who is a guy from Derry who works for the British Mountaineering Council making guidebooks, and he's made loads of brilliant guidebooks. And he said, no matter how it looks, if people can't get to the crag, they'll hate your book.
Right.
And that has to be the first thing.
Right.
So I hope. Sometimes I see, you know, you see people in Glendo with the guidebook, and I'm always
wandering around in the wrong direction,
like with it like upside down on the wrong page, trying to just twisting it, trying to orient themselves. And I always kind of go, I always cringe a bit when I see someone using it. It's like, yeah, but I think I did my best, but I'm going to revisit it maybe as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a nice thing. You're right. Like, it's not a website where you can just infinitely tweak it and you know, evolve it over time, where you're kind of boiling the frog, you know, on the long time scale. Yeah. You do have to put out editions, and they have to, like, you know, they can be markedly different from the previous edition. But at the same time, it's kind of a nice go back, revisit, kind of unactualize yourself from the book again. Yeah.
If you enjoy the process, like I haven't been doing a lot of bouldering, so I'd like to update the guide, but almost as a way just to get out and do more bouldering, to be honest with you.
So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe because you said at the beginning, you ended up writing the bouldering guidebook kind of because you were out doing a lot of bouldering. You had the information at hand. You've now written several other guidebooks, you know, Wild Atlantic Way, a scrambling guide, the Bouldering Essentials guide is kind of very closely related to the bouldering guide.
Yeah.
And you're currently working on a cycling guide.
Yeah. So I think what I've done, like since I suppose Bouldering Essentials, I've just kind of taken up a hobby and like wrote a book about that. Yeah. So, like the book after Bouldering Essentials was, I wrote a kind of select guide to rock climbing in Ireland. So it was kind of a best of, and that was actually there was a guy called Calvin Torrance and what's his name? The guy who climbed Everest. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it'll come to me. In 1984, they wrote a guide, and it was a guide to the best of. Right. Because traditionally in Ireland, the areas have been quite, not small, but each one has been served by a guide, and they don't get updated for like decades. Right, because they're small areas with small areas, population. And they always print too many, no one buys them, and they just sit there. So Calvin produced this guide and it was really, really nice, black and white, old school, but really nicely done. And I felt that Ireland needed that because there was a lot of good areas that didn't fit, good crags that didn't fit in areas, or they maybe didn't justify a guide on their own.
Okay.
So they were never documented. And people, it's funny, even in like this digital age, people are still like, they love a book. A book really kind of validates something, you know, because anyone can throw up a web page or PDF or, you know, but something about that idea of it's in the book is, you know, there's a lot of weight people place on that. So I had been very much a boulderer. I'd done a bit of trad climbing, but I'd never been like, everyone would consider me a boulderer. So I kind of was like, right, I'm going to do a rock climbing guide. So I had to like go and buy harness and buy, like I had a rack and stuff, but I mean, I really started from like ground up.
Were there knots on this rack or all nuts?
Yeah, just
no
hexes.
cams?
Yeah. But yeah, dust off my rack and kind of learn how to trad climb again. And that took about a year, and I was really lucky with the weather and partners and just all the stuff that was going on. So I had a year of full immersement in trad climbing, and that was like a reinvention as a trad climber as such. And the output of that was the Rock Climbing in Ireland book. But that was
so
really
it's just been
great.
kind of hobby to hobby in a sense.
Yeah,
kind of dust
yeah.
it off, pick it back up.
Yeah, but it's funny then, like, you know, like when you're doing it not as an out and out hobby, there's always that bit of pressure, you know, like you'd be going to the crag and you'd be like, oh, I really want to get this route, but I want to get this photo. And, you know, it's better than like having a real job, as I say.
Right.
But, you know, it does, like some days, you know, you're just like, you know.
It feels
just,
like work.
It does feel like work.
Yeah.
And like the rock climbing guidebook was great to do. And I really, like, it was great to just do a lot of trad climbing for a whole year and go out to loads of crags and do loads of routes and like scale up and find, like, immerse myself a bit in that before. Because I'd always just been, you know, doing a little bit here and there, but never really getting any kind of flow with it. And it was really nice. And then the book I was really pleased with. It doesn't really seem to sell too well, but it definitely, I think, hopefully in the future people will realize it's brilliant.
It's
like
a
I do.
sleeper. It's a sleeper. It'll
Yeah,
be a Van Gogh.
totally, yeah.
They'll be selling for hundreds of thousands in several decades.
Yeah, but definitely when I kind of announced that I was doing it, I think there was a lot around the Irish climb scene, a lot of scratched heads going on. And like,
What is Dave doing?
someone, even Steve McMullen, wrote a review of it for Irish Mountain Log, and he kind of like said, like, people were going, what the fuck is this guy doing? And I think people were probably a bit afraid, but I think a bit of objectivity I had about it, you know, because like usually traditionally a guidebook in Ireland would be written by the person who's developed the most routes in that area.
Right.
So they're like the least objective person.
Right.
And
Which is kind of why Calvin probably wrote that first book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's funny, like suddenly all their routes are getting 3 stars, and, you know, it's like the best way, for instance, to write directions to somewhere, you don't ask the person who's been there 1,000 times. You ask the person who's been there once. You know, they have much better insight into just a fresh pair of eyes. But so I had that, and that was good. And then,
now wait a second. You said that people were afraid. Do you feel like people were afraid because their routes were going to get downgraded and downstarred and, like, you know, kind of relegated to the scrap heap, or was it that they were kind of just afraid and a bit skeptical of change?
It was just an unknown kind of, you know. It's just like, I suppose I'd never done a like route climbing guidebook before, and, you know, but I was aware of that, and like I really, really relied on getting consensus and talking to people, and like, and I was the editor. Like, I wasn't like, with the bouldering guide, I kind of had a good bit of experience. I think of all the areas in the guidebook, I'd been to like 96% of them or something. Right. You know, I'd been ever, and I had a kind of good overall view. Mm-hmm. So I think I was able to say, oh, well, this place is better than this place, or, you know, and kind of just to compare. Right. But with I was coming at it fresh with the trad climb, but also I talked, like, I'd post up on my blog and I'd say, I'm thinking of including these routes in this place, and, you know, what do people think? And I got really good discussion about that. So, yeah, I don't see it. It's not my opinion, because I didn't know, I wasn't experienced enough, you know. Right. So I talked to like all these hard climbers and the people who put up the routes, and the odd time I kind of ignored their advice, but that was coming at an angle of the big picture, you know, like, because someone gives you advice and like they don't care about your page count, or they don't care about, you know, well, if you give X pages to this area, you have, you know, how are you going to balance it, you know. So I was just trying to be aware of like the general kind of formula, and then to feed in the input that people gave me. But so I did that. That was great. And then I decided to do a book. I read a newspaper article about the Wild Atlantic Way, which was this new thing in 2014. So I don't know, probably some of your listeners won't have a clue.
Won't have a clue.
Yeah.
Do explain.
So basically, the west coast of Ireland has always been a popular tourist destination. And in 2014, Board Fáilte, which are the Irish Tourist Board, decided to, I suppose, kind of commodify it. And they came up with this name, the Wild Atlantic Way. And it's 2,500 kilometre, basically driving route along the west coast of Ireland from top to bottom. And it's been a massive success.
I mean, pretty stunning coastline. So
yeah, like
fair enough.
Like the raw material was there, but like, and all the only tangible thing is that they added loads of signposts, but they put a huge amount of money. I remember, I think I read they were going to spend 10 million in a year on marketing.
Right.
And I remember thinking, that could be good. So I got cracking on that book with a guy, Richard Cray from Cork, who I'd dealt with a bit when I was doing the rock climbing guidebook, and he's a great photographer, and he had this great back catalogue of photos he'd lived along the west coast for ages. So we decided to work together on it, and we did that in about a year. And like, it's kind of because you're never going to make money from Irish climbing books, you know, you're never going to make a living, let's say.
Right.
So this book was kind of like, I suppose, to break into a place where I wouldn't have to get a real job, you know, if I could survive on that. And so it worked out pretty well. But I mean, it was we were really lucky because by the time we started, it wasn't that big a thing, and now it's huge. But the funny thing is, like, there's not really any competition for us in terms of a guidebook the way we did it. Right. Like, I remember thinking, like, once we started that, I was just going to read an article in the paper that Lonely Planet were producing there, like, next month there, Lonely Planet, Atlantic Way book is out, and that would be blown out of the water. Yeah. But it turned out great, and that was kind of different. Like, we divided up the 2,500 kilometers in half, basically, and just went out in the summer and like did like speed tourism, as I called it. Yeah. Just like visit a beach and scribble a few notes and then go to a castle and, you know, take a few photos. And, but that was cool. And like the interesting thing about it was, like, you know, you think, you know, a place, Ireland's a small country, you know, and you think, yeah, I've been around, you know, I know. But like, there are still so many places that have to get back to. And, you know, like 2,500 kilometers is a long ways. It's a lot of coastline, you know, and it's kind of like this fractal nature of it, you know, the more you zoom in, the more there is to see, like, and because that was kind of the book, we're trying to encourage people not to race around too much, you know, because like in theory, you could probably drive that in, I don't know, 5 days or something. But we were kind of saying the idea with the book was to help people, because there was a lot of photos and it was like to flick through it, whatever catches your eye, and then focus in on that. But that was interesting because it was the first time I'd collaborated with someone. And like Richard and I didn't know each other that well. And mostly we were just, you know, working kind of remotely together using like Messenger or whatever to be bouncing things back and forth. But he came up a few times and stayed in the house. And it was really interesting to work with someone. And it worked out very well. I think we had a few, we didn't have any disagreements, but we definitely had a few discussions. He was very disappointed when, do you know what a gannet is? No. A gannet is some type of seabird. Oh, okay. Yeah. No. I've heard the name before. Yeah. But would you recognize one, you say? Not. No. No. So either would I. So there was some wildlife pictures, and he was like, I saying, oh, will you just send us on the captions for the photos? And I had a few with question marks. Like there was one of like a fox or whatever, which I got, you know. Then there was other birds, and I was like, and I know he's into that kind of thing. So, and he just couldn't believe that I didn't know what a gannet was. And it was like, oh, come on. Like I don't know. But it's a big white bird. It's lovely. That's like the worst disagreement you guys had. Well, that wasn't a disagreement. That was just him. That was him just thinking I was a real dub. Yeah. But there is another one. Because I was the dub. If I was the dub, he was the culchie, right? Right. So a culchie is someone not from Dublin, basically. Yeah. Like, what's the American equivalent? Like, not. I mean, a redneck or kind hillbilly. Of yokel. Yeah, kinda, yokel. You know. Yeah. But there was this. We were writing a little 100 words on a little restaurant. It's this fancy pop-up restaurant in Connemara, and I had a 7-course tasting menu, right? Yeah. And Richard came back to me and said, "Oh, I think there's a typo there. That should be tasty menu." Which I just thought was the most culty thing that's ever been said in the history of the world. But then I don't know what again it is. So
there you go. Which is probably which is a better life skill to have. Maybe the bird recognition.
Yeah, possibly.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe
I know
not.
what Richard would say anyway. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, there you go. So you've kind of pieced this together over, I mean, at this stage, nearly 10 years or so of writing book after book, kind of, and not really making a hurry of it, or not trying specifically to, with maybe the exception of the Wild Atlantic Way, not specifically going like, okay, I'm going to do this because it's going to make me some money, or, make me a living.
Yeah.
It's more just, like you said, I want to find a hobby. I want to or I want to switch into this other thing that I've been kind of lay dormant for a while, and kind of rekindle it for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the question that I'd say that comes to my mind immediately, and probably is in the minds of more than a few people listening, is, are you able to do that simply because, it's been enough time that kind of the sales of the books have built to the point where you can, earn a living from it? Or is it, you're still sort of semi stay-at-home dad, your wife Jenny works, and that's kind of how it works?
Both probably at this stage, in a funny kind of way. I think I probably have enough for a living now, maybe industrial wage kind of thing, not like big books. Because it's funny, because people, like most of my books sell for €25. So people are like, "Oh my God, you sell 1,000 books, that's 25 grand." But I mean, there's, you have to pay.
The margin is a little bit different.
The margin is like the distributors, and everyone takes their bit. But so it's not quite like that. But I'm probably at a point, and like for the majority of the 7 years, I've been a stay-at-home dad, albeit to a wife. My wife's a teacher, so it's not like she's not working 70-hour weeks, and we still have summers and things. So that's allowed me to work part-time. Mm-hmm. So I haven't been doing it full-time at the moment. I am, funnily enough, because she's on parental leave, which is, I'm supposed to be finishing a cycling book at the moment, and she goes back to work in January. So it's been back and forth. Like,
you're on a deadline then.
Yeah. I try not to get too caught up in deadlines, because, I don't answer to anyone really. So, but then I also try not to let them slide. There comes a point when you just want to get it done,
Yeah.
Like an exam, you just go, "I'll do the exam tomorrow just to get it out of the way." Yeah. But you want it to be right as well. So it's balancing those two things. But like you need a bit of breathing like you write a book, no one's going to pay you while you're writing a book.
Right.
Like you're not going to earn any money, and it's deferred kind of.
Yeah, and it's not the kind of book you're going to get an advance from a publishing company on.
And even I know a friend of my sister's friend who got a nice advance. But I mean, to be honest, you'd be better off spending the time working in McDonald's.
Right.
And like that was off a big company, a big success,
Right.
So like anyone, like fiction is different, but I mean, you're not doing it for the money. But you do need some space to get up to speed and to get a book out there and get another book out there. And like I didn't ever want it to be I would never do, like you have to live with a book for a year.
Yeah.
And the subject matter. And if you're not into it, it's going to kill you. It'll almost kill you anyway, but it will kill you stone dead. You just won't finish the book.
Right.
Unless you're like ultra psyched on, that you're going to make a fortune or whatever,
Right.
So like I decided to do, I suppose I've got more target in what I'm doing. I'm trying to broaden the scope of my books, but within the framework of what I enjoy doing with outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah.
So I decided to do a cycling book because I'd wanted to do it for years, and I was trying to line up an author to write it, and I just edited it. But that fell through a few times, and last year I said, right, I'm going to do it. I'm a cyclist, I can cycle. So for the last year I've been doing cycling all around the country. I've done like 100 plus routes, and it's like 7 more to go. And so I just got a bike. Kona very kindly gave me a wonderful bike, and I've been just going around cycling, and not quite like full like or any of that but and it's been great because I've seen, like, by the time the book is finished, I've done everything, not everything, but like the vast majority of the good cycles around the whole of Ireland. And I'm going to put that bike in shed and never use it again.
Never look at it again.
Yeah. Because, again, it's like you have to enjoy the process. And like I was saying earlier, when you're going out and you're like, oh, I want to get this photo here, and you're, and you're just thinking about the end result from the start. It's never, you have to be in the moment a bit. And like some days that was good and some days were bad, but like I think this has showed me a bit about my boundary of how hard it is to do something you're not like. I like cycling. I don't love cycling.
Right.
So that can be tough. So I think that was a lesson learned. But and now it's just, you get to the point where you just want to get it over the line, because the worst case thing is that if you don't produce a book at the end,
you've just used up all of this time and energy.
A year, it's not an option, you know. So that's why you have to be sure when you set off on one of these things. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Mental. So let's change gears completely for just a moment. Maybe we'll come back to the guidebooks and all the rest. But one of the things that when I first, so this is all going to take a little while for the listeners to kind of catch up on, but so our brother-in-law in common, obviously my wife's brother. So my wife and Dave's families, or my wife's family and Dave's family have gone way back in scouting. That's kind of how they know each other. They live in a similar area in Dublin, but it's not like they all went to school together. And scouting in Ireland has always struck me as something completely different than anywhere else in the world. I was in Boy Scouts for years in America. I've spent a lot of time with Canadian Scouts. Now that we lived in Italy for a bunch, I've gotten the perspective of what Italian Scouts look like. And to my mind, the Irish Scouts are probably the ones that do it properly, in the sense that it's low tech. It's a bunch of lads in tracksuits and bad backpacks and, horrible like muck covered boots, plodding around in the bog and going to these camps in the pouring rain and building huge fires and, just playing around in the woods basically. And it's co-ed, which is pretty different from a lot of places in the world. Like it's the Italian Scouts are co-ed. The American Scouts are not, for sure.
Yeah.
Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, there's no in between. And God help you if you don't fit either of those two molds.
Yeah.
So I guess just, and then, over time you became more of a scout leader and kind of ran that scouting group that you guys grew up in. Like, I guess, how did you get into that? Where did that come from? What is, in your mind, what's the point of scouting? And like, it's okay if the answer is, it was actually just a pain in the ass. I was thrown into it as a kid and dealt with it.
Well, it all started, there's a guy called Leo, who I think Jeff has met, who was a scout leader, and he lived at the top of my road where I grew up as a child. And a lot of the kids on the road were in Cubs. So I went along to Cubs and just went from there. I was into the outdoors, and like my dad would have brought me camping and that kind of thing. And I guess I always was super keen on the outdoors, and then got through scouts, and I wasn't mad into like the scouty aspects. I don't think many kids really are, like the badges and uniforms.
You'd be surprised. The Americans really love that stuff.
Yeah. I always think it's the leader of the Wiener Patrol, that kind of thing. Yeah. And our group was not like one of these pseudo military kind of like the blue shirt Catholic wing of, we were fairly just, like Jeff saying, just go out and do it, not too much marching and flags and all that kind of pomp. But so I got really into it, and a lot of I made friends with people who are still my friends now. So there was kind of a very tight group, and then I stayed on as a leader, and actually I'm still kind of a leader now.
Are you still leading it?
Yeah, so I'm the group leader, which is like I always say, it's like the chairman. I don't really do much,
right?
But
you show up every quarter or something. And do
totally,
a meeting.
I like do the investors, shake the hands at the investor every year, and then like disappear into the night. But and the irony is I'm actually trying to kind of quit that. It's like I always say, scouts, being a scout leader is like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. It's very hard to actually make a clean break from it. And my daughter Hazel is about to start Cubs next year. So
no, you're stuck.
I think I'm probably left it too late now, but I don't know. It could go either way, because I don't know. She's not going to want me around forever, But yeah, it's interesting. Like over the years, like I've put a lot of energy into it, a huge amount. And I've got a massive amount out of it, and I guess that's why I feel that I could
keep putting energy back
into it. And I feel a lot of I don't feel any loyalty to the organization, but it's just the very specific individuals that were involved when I was involved, you know, and things have changed in Scouts a lot. It's a lot more bureaucratic now, and it's a lot, the kids seem a lot more distracted. It's very hard to get them to focus. But the crucial thing about Scouts, I suppose, is it's non-competitive.
Right.
And like nearly everything else kids do, it's, you know, it's some kind of competitive way. And like once they get to teenagers, you know, it's like you're cut, you're not on the team and you're sitting on the bench.
Right.
And Scouts very inclusive, and we tend to get some of the more quirkier carriers. It's like we say, you know, you hear people say climbing is for people who can't kick or throw a ball, you know, it's like those people who aren't like conventionally sporty, you know.
Right.
And like Scouts attracts that as well. But I mean, also it offers a very fashionable product that's, you know, that's huge right now, which is the outdoors.
Right.
You know, like if a teenager, or say a young teenager, wants to learn map and compass, or to learn to go wild camping, or, you know, to walk in the hills, or even do a bit of climbing, it's not very easy to get into that. Like maybe when you go to college, you can join a society, or that's the usual way. So, you know, no one else offers that. Like there's no rival group to scouting, you know, it has this stranglehold. And I think that's part of one of the things I don't like about it. It's like this big traditional, like slow moving bureaucratic kind of thing. And our group is very much like in isolation. We just do our own thing. And, you know, like we get all these edicts from above about, oh, we've changed uniform, you must do that, you must do this. And it's like, we're like, yeah, you know, we just kind of just scrape by in that sense. So we've always had that kind of individualistic streak, I guess.
Right. I mean, in a certain sense, I feel like that's what, and maybe that's why I think scouting in Ireland is so different, is maybe just the group you guys came up in has always been a little bit rogue.
Yeah.
But like that in my mind is the good bit about it. It's like the one place where, like you said, it's not competitive in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
It's let's go out, let's push all of ourselves to do something that's new, that's maybe scary. Let's not be afraid of the outdoors. Let's get used to being wet and cold.
Yeah.
Or hot and dry if you live in another country.
Yeah. Not so much a problem.
Yeah. Not so much here, but you know, it is one of those things that, you know, it almost in a sense forces some discomfort on these on kids, which I think is a good thing. So I don't know.
But even just life skills, like when it works, it really works. Like I remember, you know, we used to get the kids to do the shopping, and like I remember one camp I took over as scout leader because, you know, we always have leadership shortages, you know. So I my job is I have to step in if there's a shortage. So we went on the first camp and I was like, okay lads, Friday night, light the fire and you can cook your, heat up your hot chocolate or whatever it was. And they were just they'd never lit a fire before in their life. And I kind of gave them some guidance, but ultimately I left it up to them. And lo and behold, they didn't get any hot chocolate. So I woke up in the morning and I was like, okay lads, have another go, light the fire. And then eventually after about 5 hours, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they're like, okay, we've had our breakfast. And I was like, what? And they were saying, what should we do now? And I was like, well, you probably should get started on your dinner.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, at this stage.
So they really didn't have a clue. But then the next year at the same camp, I remember they were totally on it. And like, they're well able to do it. And just to do things like washing up, like kids don't do washing up. Kids don't go, like 15-year-olds don't plan a menu and shop and, you know, how many slices of bread is in a slice pan. Like it's like, the outdoor thing is one thing, but it's more just the life skills. Yeah. Like and like being a leader, I think is a big thing. And you know, it's not even because it's not really peer based, because you'll have people like 11-year-olds with 15-year-olds, and even like that makes the 15-year-olds feel very adult and grown up. And if you give them the responsibility to do it, like they're the important things I think in Scouts. And like the outdoors is a really good medium to do that in, you know,
right.
And it can give people a lifelong enjoyment of the outdoors, which they won't really get elsewhere unless their parent happens to be a climber or a walker or a paddler or whatever. So yeah, it is great in theory.
In theory, without the bureaucratic machine. But I suppose to a certain degree, maybe you need that bureaucratic machine to have something that you can kind of hang on the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So to switch gears again pretty strongly, one of the things that kind of going back to the original guidebook, the Bouldering in Ireland guidebook, and I guess the short span, ahead of that, the short span was a website that ran for years, and is it still up?
Yeah,
Man,
hanging in there.
Hanging in there. but it really was the community for bouldering in an entire country, which is kind of mad, coming from a country of 330 million or whatever. Like a country of 4 million is kind of insane. So it's fascinating to me that when I first arrived in Ireland, when I first got to know my wife, you guys were the group that were finding all these new areas, that were going out and actually discovering, cleaning, climbing all the first ascents on these problems. There were a handful of really strong climbers. I don't think either of us fall into that category ever.
Definitely not.
But there's a lot of people that just had that streak for, let's get out and scrub it off. And even if we can't climb it, then someone else can. And we can publicize it and get the people to come over and do that.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments in history, I think, for maybe bouldering in Ireland that will maybe never be repeated, or maybe I'm just talking through my ass and saying, we had a great experience.
Back in the day,
yeah,
kinda,
exactly. Yeah. Newspaper both ways and our feet uphill.
Yeah.
I don't know, what's your take on that? Like, do you feel like it was a particular period? Is it different now?
I'd kind of tongue in cheek call it a golden age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, because like the idea of, is it ever going to be repeated again? I guess if you charted the number of documented boulder problems in Ireland, there'd be this massive spike and then this kind of plateau.
Right.
So that period of time was that massive spike. And you don't know what you don't know. So for all we know, there could be these massive, huge plateau of like 3 square kilometers of just beautiful sandstone boulders. I mean, there could be. I don't think there is. Not that I hope there isn't, but I'd like to find it if there was. But it's unlikely. So therefore, like we used to talk in terms of, a new area. And now you hear us like talking in terms of a new problem, So like that's a golden age when you're finding new areas. Like there was a year 2003 where it's just like, it felt like we had the Midas touch. We just only climbed in new areas. And we used to, like, I think we developed like 5 areas that year. And we used to just go, like Dermot and I, your brother-in-law, I remember we used to go every, I think Tuesday. He didn't have work and I used to bunk off work every Tuesday morning. And we did that for 8 weeks in a row. And I used to just rock into work looking real cash with my jacket over my shoulder, pretending I'd just back from lunch,
Right.
And we went to this place, Mole Hill, and just for 8 weeks in a row, we just climbed new problems. And it was just totally blank canvas, and it was
that close to Dublin. Like the
like 40-minute drive, and popped down. We got up early and popped down, and it was just really cool, as you say, like cleaning stuff, and but that happened so many times. Like, there's definitely an element of looking back in the day and rose tinted glasses and stuff, but it was definitely a privilege. Like I remember walking into Glen McNass, which is this kind of hanging valley up in the hills, and it was a misty day. And someone had been on a walk a few weeks before, and they looked down into the valley and said, "Oh, it looked like there's some boulders. You should go up there." And we just walked in, and it's just just a boulder field, and like they weren't too clustered; they were just spread out just right. And it was just like, I remember letting out these whoops every time I came up to the boulder. It's just like everyone, it kept on coming, and like for if you're into finding new problems, that's what it's all about, And like now. Like definitely in my head, I have a massive list of problems to check out and clean and try, but I don't have any areas, So because they said the golden age of alpinism was when they were doing like the first descents of the Matterhorn, and like it wasn't like the hardest route, it was just get to the top, find the areas, So
and the golden age of Yosemite is the same thing, Half Dome went down, El Cap went down for the first
lines
time.
Of least resistance up the big faces and that kind of thing. So like it's great, and like there's definitely much more to do, because like Ireland, the reality is Ireland's a small country, but it's also the least densely populated country in Europe, and it's all clustered, all the population's clustered around Dublin. So like the Wicklow Mountains are just massive,
and empty. It's shocking how empty they are and how close they are to Dublin.
Yeah, exactly. Like 40-minute drive from the airport and you are in the middle of nowhere, the wind howling, like just remote. And so I guess that was what got us into it, and just roaming around the hills and really like you say, cleaning problems and just.
I remember being absolutely flabbergasted when I came to Ireland for the first time, for an extended period of time. So I was here about a year or so, and it was, I just remember going out with you guys and this exact same situation, cleaning problems every single weekend and climbing some of the best granite anywhere that I'd ever touched, hands down. Yeah. And just kind of being like, how does nobody know about this? Yeah. How does nobody know about this? Yeah. So I think, rose tinted glasses aside, my unbiased or semi-objective perspective would say that it must have been some sort of golden age.
Yeah, but also I think like the best problem you've ever done is inevitably one problem that's yours, like a first ascent or whatever. Right. There's a lot of emotional kind of attachment to that, and it's like, you know, I definitely added in problems to the guide that were like probably didn't meet the standard, you know, right. But they were like some kind of like personal attachment, like whether I did the first ascent or found the area or whatever. But right. It's definitely about that, and like it's quite a creative process. Like it's one thing going to the wall and figuring out a sequence on a problem, but like just looking at a piece of rock and kind of deciding where to go and how to climb it is, it's really cool. And I think like there's a lot of boulders who are into that niche. Like it's a niche, but like it probably demands a lot of time. You know, that's why I can't do it at the moment much, but it's the thing I miss most for sure. And like I get tormented by the idea. Like slowly, like I'd see a video on Facebook or a photo and it'd be someone who's done a problem that would be on, inverted commas, my list of problems that I was like, shit, I really wanted to get back to that problem. And it's like, I know that the more time, like I'll never get them all done. Like there's lifetimes of like, for a really good climber. And there's sometimes, like I remember there was one, someone did, this guy Philip Duke did recently, and it was 7B. And I was like, I was totally cool about him doing it because it was like, not that I had any ownership of it, but just that idea that like I didn't feel it slip through my fingers. Right. So I never would have been able to climb it. You know, it's like grand. You know? Yeah, fair enough. When someone does like a cool 6A plus that I'll be like really pissed off. But it's going to happen, you know, because like there's too many, you know. I always joke that I must write down a list in case I get knocked down by a car.
Yeah. So everybody knows where to go.
Yeah, exactly. You can share them out at the funeral or whatever. Right. Divvy them up, you know.
There's a lottery.
Yeah.
Please do write that list down, actually. I would love to have a few of those. It is one of those, you know, bouldering is a niche sport, but at the same time, there is something creative and there's something kind of magical about it in the sense that it is actually probably more social than it is. I mean, it's physically extremely strenuous. Like, you know, it's probably the cause of most climbing injuries, you know, minor injuries that don't end up in, you know, people dying. But it is kind of more of a social thing, isn't it? Like you can either do it socially as a group or you can go out and do it, you know, on your own, but it becomes kind of more of a meditation almost in that sense.
Like I've done a lot of like in the latter half of my climbing career, inverted commas, I've been out on my own, just like spacing out, you know, just wandering around. But back in the day when we had a lot more free time, you know, we used to go around and we used to go great trips away down the country, you know, camping at the boulders. Because the thing about bouldering in Ireland is all the climbing is in the nicest parts of the country. Yeah. Like bouldering will take you to some really great places, you know, that are just that bit off the beaten track, but still really nice. And like, that's about as much it as anything. If we were talking about grotty little overhanging walls in some urban park or something, you know, like say like Dorky Quarry or somewhere, like it'd be a different relationship.
You're going to get hate mail for that one.
Yeah, I know. People. But you know, like it was as much that, like you say, going out and having a crack and like just camping and, you know, because you can only boulder so many hours in the day. So it's a lot of like, I don't know what you're doing the rest of the time, but just to spend time up in the hills with some of your pals and like have a fire and have a few beers and, you know, climb some rocks. It was great. Look, definitely in my point of view, I think all of our group looks back in that time, you know, we were young, we were free, you know, how could it not be the golden age, you know? Right.
No kids.
And like,
I wonder if we're going to come around to that cycle where the kids all get old enough that we can start like back into that and it's going to feel free again.
It'll be like the platinum age, you know? It'll be like the golden oldies going out like back in the day, creaky guys.
Oh God. Well, we can hope.
Kids will be like kicking our asses.
Yeah, that'll be true. But that won't be so bad.
Yeah, no,
they can do all the hard problems that are on the list.
They can carry the pads.
I can carry the pads. Exactly. Oh, my back. It's so sore. Anything else you want to specifically mention? When's the cycling book come out?
Early spring.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to get it done. It'll be out soon. And then, after that, I think I've one more book in me.
Is that it? What are you going to do after that?
I never like to look too far ahead because, you know, you just can't. But I've an idea for another book, but then after that, I think like I've tapped it out. I don't know. Caving in Ireland. I don't know.
That sounds terrifying.
No, I wouldn't do that. But Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll. Oh, I want to write a Cold War thriller.
A Cold War thriller.
Yeah,
So
like
total
John le Carre
genre
kind of.
change.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. So yeah,
That
stay
sounds
tuned.
fun.
Yeah, it'll be
that
good,
sounds
yeah.
super fun.
Sounds like torture.
I'll write the screenplay. Then we can retire. In
Yeah,
like,
no, you get all
a
the
couple
money
of
then,
years.
no dice.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I'll have to buy the rights off of you. I
Yeah,
suppose,
okay,
so.
yeah.
Oh well. All right. Well, listen, Dave. Thanks so much for sitting around with me.
No
And,
problem. My pleasure.
Yeah, we will see each other all the freaking time because we live down the street from each other.
Yeah. See you on the school run tomorrow morning.
Yeah, sounds good. See you, Dave.
See ya. Thanks.
So that's it. My conversation with Dave Flanagan. Now, I hope you guys all enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please give us a subscribe on whatever podcast system you are currently using. You can also check us out on Instagram. I've been loading up tons of my old photos there, so hopefully they're fun to look at. And I will also be announcing new guests there on Instagram and on our Facebook page. Thanks again, and I will see you again very soon.